Okay, so let's learn this. We're learning Nasa no Aliyas Irktada. And this wonderful pasuk on page 129 in the Bible, okay? What? I don't hear you. What?
I found the quote on the door and I put it up on the WhatsApp.
Okay, thank you. I found it also. Shabbos, when I was in Chicago, I had time. They had the Svarim. I took out the Zohar. I took out another Bible, and yes, I found it. But I don't want to go back right now. But it's a Zohar. So basically, she says the Isha Shunamis, this lady. Okay, she lived in a city called Shunaim. That's why she's called Shunamis, the woman of Shunamis. And she says that there's this holy man going by here, Kabibayo, constantly. We have to make a place for him. Let's make a bed, a shulchan, a kisei, a menorah. So now we're going to begin learning what is this idea of a bed. So everyone turn at the bottom of 129, and he quotes the Zohar. Let's start again. 5 lines at the bottom, the 4 last words on the line. What does this practically mean? It says in the Zohar Chelik Beis, Daf Kuf Gimel, Obed Aleph, the Mita Shulchan Kisei Menorah Hebdalet Tikun Shchinta. These are 4 methods in which you're able to correct the Shechina. We all know the Shechina is a Golus, right? The whole idea of davening, Moshe, learning and doing mitzvahs is to bring a tikun to the Shechina. So let's see what the tikun is over here. So it says in the Zohar HaKadosh, the mito tfilas arvis, a bed represents the evening service, arvit. The shulchan kisei b'daira, the table, the chair, and the candelabra, is number 1, Sleisa, the Shachris, the morning prayer, Shachris. Shulchan Hu Psukim Zibra are the verses of praise within the Shachris. Birchas Krishma and Birchas Krishma. That's all encapsulated in the table. Everything will be explained later, I believe. Kisei, the chair, is Krishma. Simply speaking, you know that the halacha is that when you say Shema, you're supposed to be sitting. You know that, right? So, you sit on a chair. So, Kisei represents Krishma. And finally, the menorah, the candelabra, Tfilah Shmon Esrei is the Amida. Why? Because the Shmon Esrei, the culmination of Tfilah in a way, is to illuminate the world in various ways, in health, in Parnasa, in Geula, in Teshuvah. So it's illumination. Top of 130. So we must understand. Hilo, please mute yourself. Haliksiv erev avoker tzarayim osicha. In the evening, in the morning, in the afternoon, I speak. For the word sicha, siach, to talk. I talk to you, Hashem. Shehei, these 3 times are Gimel Tfilos, the 3 prayers of Shachris, Mincha, Arvis. V'yadua, it's known, the Gdoila Milas Tfilas HaMincha Shara Tfilos, the Arvis of Shachris, that there's an advantage to Mincha over Ma'ariv and Shachris. How do we know? A Chazal. Chazal say Kamaimer, L'yoylam Yehei Odim Zoyer B'Tfilas Mincha. A person should always be careful with their mincha service. It doesn't say that, Yoini, about Shachris, and it doesn't say it about Arvis. It says it about mincha. And I can tell you that what we're going to learn today was so true. Just now in Chicago. Shachris, I had a minyan in the morning in Chicago. Myra had a minyan here in Borough Park. In the middle of the day, I got to make the plane at 3 o'clock. Where do you get a minyan? So the 11:48 was chatzos. A half an hour after is 11:50, 11:18 or so. Where you get 12:18? Where are you getting your minyan? So by the mechutin of the simcha, I went to try to put it together, but we only had 8. We were too short. daven biyachidus. So the mincha is the hardest time to get a minyan, bepashtus, simply speaking. Or you're working, you're on the road. Moshe is driving to Beitar to pick up materials for Safras, and the sun's going down. You have to daven mincha. And it happened to me once on the way back some way. I had to stop on the road and daven mincha. You know, the Rebbe once was coming back from the OL in the early years. He stopped at Atlantic Avenue, and he went into Balshan, and he davened mincha to a printer, a Lubavitcher printer. He davened mincha. You know, mincha comes, well, the famous story with Rabbi Feller and Professor Velvel Green. The first time he met him, I think, or so, and he asked him for an appointment. He was a NASA scientist, and he was a Yiddishist, and, you know, and at that time wasn't into, was anti-religion. And the rabbi calls and says, I want to meet you. A famous story, Moshe's make with his head. It's a famous Chabad story. And he says, okay, I'll give you a meeting. You want a meeting? Come. And he's thinking to himself, I'm going to have a lot of fun with this guy. Before he says anything, he says, Dr. Green, if you don't mind, the sun's going down. I need to pray. Well, what should he tell him? And he just gets up, he faces the wall, puts on his gartel, and he davens mincha. And Velvel Green said later that honesty and sincerity blew him away. You know, if he could have the chutzpah basically God's more important than you, Green, with all your science and all your space astronauts and everything else, you're worth your money. And that's how he started the relationship with him. So mincha is the most powerful tefillah. So what's the Rebbe's question here? Why is mincha not considered over here to be the most important tefillah? That's the question. So the Rebbe says that itself is the answer. Since mincha is so great, the four corrective methods of the bed, the table, the chair, and the menorah. In other words, Moshe, in this piece of Zohar, it says there are four things that prepare to correct the Shekhinah. The bed, which is Ma'ariv, and then Shachris. And there are three steps of Shachris: the Shulchan, the Kisei, and the Menorah. Shachris, and within Shachris, it's the Psukkah de Zibra and Shmon Esrei. And there's no mention of Mincha. And else Mincha is not a tikun on the Shekhinah. That's the Rebbe's question. If Chazal highlights so greatly Mincha, why doesn't the Zohar mention it as one of the ways of correcting the Shekhinah? What is his answer? That from the question itself, he says, he on the sentence means for the question itself, you have an answer. And what is that? That it is not a corrective method. It is a preparation for those corrections to be proper. It's a prelude to the corrective methods. In other words, in order to do a tikun, you have to be in a realm and in a sphere where your tikun will be worth its money. Your tikun will make a difference. If you're outside Yoni of the atmosphere, of the realm, of the arena of tikun, because you yourself are elsewhere, jump up and down and daven up and down, you're not making a tikun. Now, of course, let me say this for the record, so we shouldn't walk away with a mistake. You still should daven. But when you're talking about making a tikun, this is not small change over here. You know, there are people who will study some Kabbalah, and it says in the Kabbalah that when you make this and this bracha, you should have in mind God's name with this and these nikudos. And when you make another kind of bracha, make another with other nekudos. And if you ever see, some people actually use this type of a siddur, the Rashash and other siddurim, in shul when they daven. I'm not, chas v'sholom, belittling anyone, but it's fine to do that, and you're well intended, but can we actually say you're making the tikkun? How do you know you're succeeding? The answer is, if you are in tikkun mode, then you're making the tikkun. If you're not in tikkun mode, and you got up at 12 o'clock, right? And you party till 3 in the morning, you ain't making no tikkun. I don't care what siddur or what nekudas you use. No, but you're laughing, Moshe. But there's some people who are so foolish. They think just by following the script, I'm making a tikkun. By following the script, you're doing a mitzvah. Yes, that you're doing. But to make a tikkun, Avi, requires refinement, not just knowledge. It refines a preparation, and that's what the Rebbe says here. The tefillah of Mincha is so great that if we identify with Mincha, it prepares you. And I can tell you, just from this experience that I had yesterday, and I've had it all my life, and I'm sure you've had it, how much more meaningful it is to me to daven with a minyan. When I want to daven with a minyan, and I have 8, I don't have 10, I have to end up davening b'yachidus, and it bothers me. That puts you it gives you more importance and more desire to think about how you could make the minyan for mincha the next time around when you have to travel. And I'm just saying that's the pshat. If you want to know practically, what does the Rebbe mean? What do the Chazal mean? So Yonis is in Rabat Gibel, you're in Rabat there. What's the big deal? You go down to a shul, 700 shuls. What's the big deal? The answer is, when you're in the middle of doing something, and you have to tear yourself away from what you're doing, and you do that because it's time to daven mincha, then you show that tefillah really means something to you. And if you do that, then when you go about to try to make a tikkun during the Arvis and Shachris, your tikkun has more of a chance of accomplishing that the Shechina should be reunited. They say the story that this person, he was told about a certain rabbi that he fasted for 40 days or 40 nights, or he said a certain tefillah, and he had Gilu Eliyahu. He had the revelation of Elijah, Eliyahu Hanavi. So he said, I'm going to do the same thing. He fasted 40 days, 40 nights, whatever, and he said he doesn't see an Eliyahu Hanavi. So the rabbi said to him, of course you don't see Eliyahu Hanavi. The fasting is only a robotic thing. It's what's behind the fasting that's primary to experience an Eliyahu Hanavi, if you get that experience. And so I don't want to go off more on a tangent on this concept, but sometimes people, in Yiddish we say the words, they banarischen sich. A nar means a fool. They become very foolish. And they think by doing Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Daled, you make a tikkun. And it's the same thing, by the way, with the segulas. 1 second, Moshe. With segulas. In Chabad, we're not into segulas, you should know. The whole idea of segulas to us is foreign and non-interesting. Once in a while, if a tzaddik, a rebbe, says, that's an exception to a rule. But as a general rule, all these segulas, now, it doesn't mean that they're harmful, chas v'sholom, and it doesn't mean they're not truthful. The question is, are you at a place within yourself that the segula will have an impact? A segula is not abracadabra. This is a big mistake. Abracadabra, it doesn't work that way. You say the Parshas Habon on Yom Shlishi of Parshas B'Shalach. It's Shalom Kodesh. Very nice. The Shalom is a tzaddik, the Parsha is a Parsha of the Torah, so both are true. The question is whether you can accomplish parnosa through saying the parsha of the month, specifically on Parsha B'Shalach. And what's the answer? Well, 1 second. Give me a second. I know I'll take your question. The answer is, if you're saying the parsha because you're into the parsha, and even if it were not the third day of Parsha B'Shalach, you would ask Hashem for parnosa sitting in your room, Yoni, over there, and me over here. I always tell my wife, a kaisel, right? The kaisel, you have a kaisel in your house. I have an oil in the house. Of course, the kaisel is the kaisel, and the oil is the oil. But nevertheless, the Rebbe in the early years, you should know, the Rebbe answered people, Askal Aratziyah, 1951, 52, I'll mention you. And sometimes for a week to two, he didn't go to the Ohel. So they asked the Rebbe, you just said Askal Aratziyah. You know what he said? In the room, there's also the Tzion. What kind of answer is that? In the Rebbe's room, there's the Tzion. What kind of answer is that? The answer is, if you're at a level where in your dining room you have the Ohel, it's possible that you could accomplish the same thing. Of course, it doesn't take away from standing at the physical place of the Ohel, but it's important to know this is the Chabad. There's definitely others who disagree and say otherwise. Let me take first Moshe's question because he was first, and then Yoni, you. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, when you were talking about making a preparation for a tikun, just for a moment, the concept of going to mikveh every morning before davening. I know it's part of it. I'm just curious, maybe a little word for maybe just how it's.
Okay, very good.
How it's part.
It's very good that you asked that. Thank you very much. Very good you brought up that. The way I was taught, we go to the mikveh to prepare ourselves for the day, for davening. We cleanse ourselves. Water is cleansing. We immerse ourselves to show that we get rid of our ego and we're submerged by water. There are kavanot in the mikveh brought in holy svarim. My Rebbe, Olav Hasholem, my 9th grade Rebbe, Mesifta Aleph Yoni, Rabbi Marlo Olav Hasholem, who the father of the Rabbi Marlo was in North Miami Beach, the rabbi. He was my Rebbe. He was a big Talmud Chacham. And I saw him in the mikveh in Lubavitch Yeshiva on Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn. And he first went under the water, then he prostrated himself, and then he stood back up. And he did 3 sets of 3. And it caught my curiosity. I was 1975, so I was 14 years old. So I asked him. And he told me that he was told by the principal of our yeshiva, Rabbi Tenenbaum, who either was told by the Rebbe or actually saw the Rebbe doing this in the mikveh. Because it's brought in the Kabbalah that when you go under the water, you should also be like a fish. Because the idea of a fish has an open eye and it's blessed. So a fish is this way, not this way. Ever since then, that's the way I go to the mikveh, from 14 years old, because my Rebbe said that. I didn't question him. Right? If one doesn't do that, they haven't gone to the mikveh? Of course they've gone to the mikveh. So there are certain things in Chabad that we will do because a Rebbe, a tzaddik, did it this way, and if he says we should do it this way, or you have a feeling you want to emulate it, and you're not superficial. You're not going to make a show out of it. That everyone around you has to wait till you get out of the water and you're going to make 75 tefillas, and all kinds of shtick in the mikveh. You got to be sensitive to someone else who wants to come in and be a mensch. And don't stick your body out and bang the guy's head. You know what I mean? But if you're able to do it, you come early, you're able to do it, you want to do it, kol hakavod. So my answer to you is, Moshe, that the tikun of the mikveh, there's all kinds of tikunim. But we in Chabad, we never, spend time. Oh, this tefillah is for this sin, and this tefillah is for this sin. No, I heard, for example, from not a Chabad chassid, but someone who was very religious, a Hungarian chassid. He would go the first thing in the morning, and the mikveh was open Shabbos morning, because it's brought in the Svarim that if you're able to, you should be together with your spouse Friday night. And he wanted to, in the morning, cleanse himself from that physically and spiritually. So he wanted to get the first waters. Okay, no problem. Do that. My point is that everyone, you're entitled to your mishigas or your holiness as long as you don't bother anybody else. That includes your spouse and your kids and your friends and your rabbis. You want to be frum, you want to be fanatical, you want to be super religious, you want to be super Hasidic, no problem. On your own cheshbon, not on someone else's cheshbon. Have I given you a long-winded answer, Moshe?
No, very good. That's you hit all the points.
I got it. Okay, Yaini, your turn.
So I think my question may be similar to Moshe's. Maybe I'm misunderstanding. I'm trying to understand the difference between tikun, segula, and minhag.
Oh, it's not the same as Moshe, but it's a good question. Well, look, a segula means, let's take that Parshas Habon on Bashalach, right? It's upcoming in a few weeks. Tuesday, Yom Gimel, Parshas Bashalach, the Shalom writes, I think it's the Shalom has what's called the Tfilas Haman, right? Parnasa. I don't know if he says you should say it on the third day. Does he say you say it on the third day? If someone says it on the third day. So whoever says it, if it's the Shalom, it's the Shalom. It's a segula to say that. That's not making a tikun to the Shechina. That's a segula, Yoni, for Parnasa. That has nothing to do with the Shechina. The Shechina means that we don't have a Beis Hamikdash. Shchinta begalusa. The Shechina is in Galus. And when you daven these two tefillas of Arvis and Shachris, and you daven properly, you do everything we're going to learn that he speaks about through the tefillas, you reunite spiritually that aspect of the Shechina with the Godhead, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and kind of bring peace and solace and unity between a Gula situation and a Geula situation. But that has nothing to do with a remedy. There's no remedies there. In other words, doing that doesn't mean you're going to have better parnasa. We're talking about a reunification between that aspect of Hashem that's fallen into klipos, into sparks, spiritual sparks, into galus, and you need to reunite that aspect of God. Let me try to say it a different way. Before you can deal with the hardcore issues of parnasa and health, and you want to be in a realm where it's meaningful, that what you're going to do will have an impact, or at least will try to have an impact. So therefore, you have to create a situation where the Shechina, and it all begins with the Shechina. If the Shechina wasn't in Golus, we wouldn't have Golus. We wouldn't have Taigas HaParnasa, anxiety of Parnasa. We wouldn't have hatred. We wouldn't have bigotry. We wouldn't have Machlokas. We would have all these Sholem, like in the time of Shlomo Melech. Why do we have all this? Because Shechinta Bigalusa. The Shechina's in Golus. So now minhag, so I explained what remedy is, what segula is, and I explained what tikun is. Minhag is a custom. Minhag has the same letters as the word Gehenim. So when we do a custom, which was instituted by a community at a certain period, and it had validity for many years, and it became part of this community, Although it's not brought in halacha and not brought in the oral Torah or in the written Torah, it becomes stronger than even a din. Because when Jewish people live a certain way and accustom themselves, minhag from the word hanhaga, they accustom themselves, that's real. Everything else is theoretical. The Gemara says, the Torah says, the Shulchan Aruch says, yeah, and how do you live your life? Oh, I don't do that. That's not interesting. So if that's the case, what's your knowledge of Torah worth? You know, do you, so minhag, that's why, Hillel, it's specifically minhag that counters Gehenim. You ask yourself a question, Torah Shebiksav doesn't counter Gehenim, Torah Shebalpeh doesn't counter minhag. And that's the explanation. Because to get rid of Gehenim, to get rid of a real problem, you have to live it and live it out. Minhag, custom yourself. And when Yidden did a certain custom, that means they went through the experience. And there's nothing that can substitute for going through an experience. Because everything else is talk, and talk is cheap. It's lip service, a lot of lip service, holy lip service. Let me see you live this way. You know, Rabashkin, right? Why is he so popular? Why? From everywhere. Lakewood, Chabad, Chassidim, Sfardim. Why? Because he is not lip service. He sat in jail for 8 years, right or wrong. I'm not going into that. Fact is, and he had to put on film, and he had to light a menorah, and he had to deal with a warden, and he's learning with Rabbi Lipschitz of Yated, who's a Litvak, he's learning Chovos HaLevavos. That's real. All of us, listen, Baruch Hashem, we didn't sit in prison, and we didn't have these issues. I understand. But the fact is that someone who went through the hardship, he can speak about it because it's real to him. It's not just, he had to go through it. So minhag means we went through it together, and that's why it has such power, a minhag Yisrael. Okay, where are we up to? We'll stop here, and we'll continue with Hashem tomorrow. Any questions, Avi? Avi, I got to hear from you. I like you a lot. What do you say?
It's contradictory to want to hear from me and to have the mute on. So either the mute is on and you don't hear from me, but you can look at me. I can
No. Now I want to hear from you.
Everything's good.
Anyway, Baruch Hashem, you're helping Yidden, Baruch Hashem. Everyone have a great day. Great day. Mashiach now. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.